In this movie, we're going to create a single stroke O, and we're also going to use all the letters that relate to the O or similar to the O to create single strokes out of those. These are the usual suspects that you would bring in and see if they all work correctly. One of these letters is not going to do it though, and that would be the letter D. So the letter D is a slight variation from the letter O, and it would be worth not including in this particular group. Now, in some typefaces, the O and the D really line up very well with each other, but that's not the case with impact. So I've already created these as outlines and I've ungrouped them so I can move them around and compare them. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of them, and I'm going to change the transparency value to 30% on all of them. That way we can overlap and see what they all do in relationship to each other. So I want to get rid of the D as part of this group, but just to demonstrate, I'm going to grab and drag this over here, and let's zoom in here, and you can see that the O, if I move the D around in here, you can see that the line doesn't quite line up, and I'm looking here in this curve over here. It doesn't quite line up with that, and it could have, and then it's just a matter of me moving the line higher or lower to catch up with the overshoot. You can see down on the bottom, down here, you can see that that doesn't line up either. So the O definitely does not belong with the D and vice versa. So let's put that back. And the other ones that are a little difficult to see are the Q and the G. Let's look at the G first. Now the G is worth generating the O with, but you can see over here that the G has a spur. That's this part of the letter G. And the spur comes in well into the letter form in here. And you can see that this curve in here is taking a different path. It's not going to go and meet up with the outside curve over here. And the curve starts to turn right out here before even the center, before it gets to the center of the letter, it already started its curve on its way up. Let me put the O back. And as we're looking at the G just by itself, at face value, it really does feel like this is really heavy. But when we back away from it and we look at all the letters together, it doesn't look disproportional at all. So that was clearly a decision that the designer, Jeffrey Lee, who designed Impact, was considering as far as what do the proportions look like. So the G is going to take a little bit more work to do the outline, and we'll explore that in a different movie, along with the letter Q. And so if I take this over and move it over on top of the letter Q, and now we'll zoom in here, now you can see the same type of thing is happening down here on the bottom, where the Q, the bottom of the circle part of the Q is not lining up. And not only do these curves not line up with where the normal curve would have been, they don't even line up with each other. If I take this curve and I apply it to this side of the Q, you can see that this continues and this one dips in a little bit further. And I actually love seeing this type of thing because you know that Jeffrey Lee, back in 1965 when he created this typeface, this is one of those things that he just meticulously looked at and tried to get it right so that the letter would feel proportionally correct. Now, it works great while this is in a very bold or grotesque style, but when this turns into an outline, that's also going to change. We're not going to need this type of a dip in here to make up for the tail of the Q. So that's also going to be a unique typeface, so we're going to have to pay a little bit more attention than the creation of the U and the C. Those are really no-brainers. Okay, so that's what we're going to do in this movie, and it's going to go by really fast. So let's do it the old-fashioned way, and I'm not going to do it in my other document, which I still have open. It's going to be easier for me just to do it all in here since I'm going to be using the same letters. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just bring in some reference to the ascending line, and I'm going to bring in a reference to the baseline just so we can see where everything is. That kind of help determines where the end of the spur is on the letter G, which lines up right with the baseline. And you can see that the U doesn't overshoot on the bottom, but not on the top. The Q, interesting enough, doesn't do an overshoot at all with the circular form. Uh, the tail just goes ahead and extends it, so we just accept it as having a descender. Okay, so anyway, selecting the O, I'm going to do a Command C for copy, and then I'm going to turn it into a guide. So we'll go to the View drop-down menu, slide down to Guide, and select Make Guide, or do a Command if you're on a Mac, or a Control if you're on a PC, and the number 5, and that puts it in there. I'm going to do a Command Shift V, paste in place, and so it gets its orientation. I'm going to turn off the transparency here, make that 100% so we can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to reverse the strokes so that it's a dark stroke. I'm going to then call up, let me zoom in here a little bit more so. If I do a Command Y, I can just click and drag and zoom in on the letter, and I'll do a Command Y again so I can see the stroke. I'm going to select everything within that O, and I'm going to select the object drop-down menu and slide down to my compound path and release that. Now I can apply the blend tool. So either do a W on your keyboard or call the blend tool from the tool palette. And I'm just going to click on the top point and the bottom point, and it's done. It's really that easy. Okay, so as you remember, when we do a Command Y, we won't see any reference to that center stroke between the counter and the outer edge of the letter form. So it goes away. And so in order for us to get it, we have to expand the letter, and we'll just try doing the default values at first and see what we end up with. You want to pay attention to how many points are being generated on the stroke. Sometimes you'll have a stroke on the bottom of the, rather you'll have a point on the bottom of the stroke and one on the top. That lets you know that it converted your stroke into a shape, and we don't want that. Okay, so it got what I wanted, and so I'm going to select the outside of the letter and the inside, holding the Shift key down, and I'm holding the Option or Alt key. That allows me to select the whole strokes that I selected. Notice I did not select the inner stroke, and I'll just delete that. The next thing I want to do, and fortunately for me, this O was generated with two sister center points, if you will. I can select all of these points up to these points and just get a little bit past that, and I can just go ahead and move these to the top. Now I'm not going to need to do the overshoot nearly as drastically as this one is, and I'm not going to do it at all. It's going to make the O look a little awkward for now, but I would rather go ahead and make my adjustments on the overshoot when I decide how thick of a stroke I want to use here. But for now, I'm just interested in generating the larger letter, and then I can bring that down. So that's fine by me, the way that sits. So that takes care of the letter O. Now I can go ahead and select this, Command C for copy, do a Command 0 to back away, and one of the easy ones is the letter C, so we'll zoom in here on the C, and we'll paste my O again, Command V for paste, and now because I locked it to the ascending and the baseline, I'll know I'll have the same alignment that I had before. And I'm just going to drag this out over here, and I just need to get a bead on where the C is going to be clipped. It's this line over here that I'm interested in. So I'm going to grab my scissors tool, and well, actually what I can do before I do that is I can select this and go ahead and make that into a guide. So I'll do a Command or Control on a PC and the number 5, and that makes that into a guide. Now I have a place I can take my scissors tool and do a snippet right there, and another one over here. And now I can just go ahead and select that inner space there and delete it. And I deleted it twice because the first delete got rid of the stroke and the second delete got rid of the leftover points. So the C is done. So we'll do a Command 0. And now we're going to go work on the letter U. And we'll move this over here. I'm holding the Option key down to make a copy of it. And it's centering to its center of the letter U. The bottom is fine, relatively speaking. And so it's the top that I need to clip off. So in here, I'm going to, here's where the stroke becomes parallel with each other. So I want to hang on to this point and this point. I don't want these over here. But before I do that, let me make my bottom U into a guide. So we'll do a Command 5 or Control 5 on a PC. Now I can come back over here and go after. I want these points to stay behind. I want these points all above here to be gone. So I'll just delete those. And then I'll grab these guys over here and I'll drag them up until they snap to my ascending line. I'm dragging them up with the Shift key down. And it's done. So the O easily allowed me to create the C. Clearly I'm going to want to come back and modify this because this already starts to look like it's dipping way too low. But that's a decision I'll make later. For now, I'll go ahead and take these strokes and I'll hold the Shift key down. I'll copy them and I'll go back to my other document and I'll paste them over here in the top layer, and I'm going to move them completely out of the way so I can negotiate where they belong. So here's the C, which admittedly looks a little funky, but I'll put it over here for now. And here's the O, and I'll put that over here. And I'll put my U over here. And I'll come back and fix them now. So now I'll worry about fixing the letter U. So I'll click on the back U in here, Command 5 to make it into a guide. And I'll move this and I'll let it lock in the center there. So that one's done. I'll go to the C now and click on the C. Command 5 makes it into a guide. Hold the Option key down to select the whole letter C and drag that to the top and let it lock on the grid. It's found its center. That one's done. And go to the O and zoom in here and click on the compound. Not getting all of it, so I'll go ahead and click and drag so I can get the inner space. It's not a compound. It's been the compound has already been released, but that does need to become a guide. So again, Command 5, and now I can grab my O and drag that and get it to line up in its center. So back away. And if you remember on those strokes that I've created, I had gone ahead and given everything a stroke width of 10. So we'll go ahead and do a Command F10. Oh, the strokes were already open. Or Control F10. And just for the sake of having the same size, I'm going to make that into a 10. And those are done. Okay, so in the next movie, we're going to wrap up all the related strokes. We're not using the D. It's too different. But we can complete the letter Q and G. So we'll do that in the next movie.